Hey, what is up, guys? It is Rapmark here. So, doing my Nightmare Alley review. So, I was a little late in doing this, but you know what? It is what it is. So, what did I think of this? Um, from the trailers that I saw, it was different from what I was expecting it to be. You think Guillermo del Toro, you think more supernatural kind of monsters. Um, and this one, it was definitely a little bit different. It was more of a thriller, psychological type movie, one that definitely makes you think. Um, so I think the trailers kind of didn't do it justice. They kind of promoted it as a movie that it wasn't, is how I got from. But on that note, I enjoyed it. I did thoroughly enjoy this film. Um, it I loved the characters. I loved it. It's kind of a slow burn. So I was gonna say I like the pace. Like it this movie doesn't feel like it like overly drags on. Like you don't feel like you're gonna watch, but there are like at 2.5 hours. I think that's what this movie's at. 150. So yeah, about 2 hours 20 minutes. Um, you do kind of feel that one as opposed to the last review I did, Spider-Man, um, where you almost forget that you've been there for 2 hours. This one you can definitely feel like you've been there for 2.5 hours. Um, there are spots where it does seem to sort of drag, but I didn't feel disappointed by this movie. Like it went to a place where I felt like this was a good story. There were good characters. There was good acting. You know, for the most part, things made sense. And yeah, it was super fun. I mean, you have a huge all-star cast. You have freaking Bradley Cooper as the main guy, Stan. Um, Kate Blanchett as the lawyer, the other main character. Let's see, who else do we have? We have Tony Collette, who plays sort of this old, I wouldn't say old, but middle-aged, like older type woman who like the kind of does a mentalist type thing with her husband, who is David Stratham or Strath Strathern. There we go. And of course, William Defoe is also in this one. He looks great. He's a So yeah, the whole thing is like there's a lot of carnival based things. You deal with carnies. Um, it doesn't specifically state what year this is in, but just based from like the opulence, um, the way people dress, and obviously just how people are treated. I would guess between World War One and Two, so probably I would say before the Depression, and it kind of probably hits the Depression like at the end, which I'll get into lately. But I don't know. I would say this is a mid 1920s film, and I love it because it does a beautiful job of like capturing that feeling, while at the same time just being its own individual story. You also have Ron Perlman here. He plays the strongest man in the thing. Um, oh my God, yeah, there is a lot. of it. Yeah, this was a very star-studded cast, and they delivered. Um, let's see what else can be said. I mean, this one was actually directed by Guillermo del Toro. Because I know the last one, the one dealing with werewolves, I forget what the heck that's called. He didn't direct it. He just produced it, and they promoted it hardcore, and it just was like, yeah, it wasn't the greatest. Oh my gosh, he's doing Pinocchio for Netflix. I am super excited for that. All right, what was the one that he did? Yeah, it is not telling me, which is unfortunate. But anyway, he does a great job, And again, it threw me off because again, you think Del Toro, and you think of more supernatural, more monster stuff, and there's kind of supernatural stuff, like when you deal with the carnival. I mean, you have tarot cards, uh, but and like just this. For the most part, though, yeah, I mean that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head. But for the most part, though, this is more very psychological, like how I mean, how to describe this? It's literally a psychological tale of how a man, tries to make it in this world, and he pushes things too far, and then he ends up with nothing. And it's actually a very like sad and depressing tale. Like this is not a movie that has a happy ending. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Um, but it is a very good self-contained story that kept me engaged throughout. It's you're definitely not like toward the third act. I kind of figured where it was going, but I mean before then you don't know where it's going. You're being taken for a ride, and it's like whoa. Yeah, it kind of was. I was along for the ride, and then by the time you kind of figure things out on the third act, because things kind of do come predictable on that, which is unfortunate. But you at that point you're so invested, you kind of just go on for the ride, even if you kind of figured out where it's gonna go. So what what would I give this movie? Honestly, I think between an 8 and a 7. I think I'm gonna have to give this. Oh, this is so tough. I'm gonna give it an 8. I'm gonna give it an 8. I might be over generous. I'm just gonna say that it might deserve a 7, but no, I'm giving it an 8 because again, I was everyone like all the characters were great. Uh, the pacing again, it's a slow burn. It's a very slow paced movie until that third act, but yeah, you're pretty invested in it for most of the way. So I can understand why this didn't get very much movie at the box office. It came out the same time as Spider-Man. It is definitely for older audiences, for sure. and most of them are avoiding movie theaters at this point. So I don't know. Maybe it'll get more when it goes to streaming. I don't know, but this is a great movie. I would advise seeing it. Whether go and see it. I don't know. At this point, it's mostly out of theaters. So I mean, definitely when it comes out on streaming, you should definitely take a gander at it. So that is my thoughts for this. So I will be back in just a moment and we will get into spoilers. So I will see you then. Hey guys, it is Rapmark here. So let us go with the spoiler section in this. So, I mean, our main character is Stan, and it starts with him burning down his a house with the body in the floor, and after that he goes and he takes a job as a carny. So he's essentially learning all these all these tricks, and this is where majority of the first act takes place. So you're dealing with things like you have a mentalist, who is teaching him how to go. So Madame Xena, so that is Tony Collette's character, and her alcoholic husband Pete, which is David Strathairn. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. So essentially, it goes into like how they manipulate people through creating a coded language system through holding your hand out, or saying something means something. But yeah, it's super fun, and so he starts picking Pete's brain for like how to do it, and they warn him. They warn him because there's one point where Pete's an alcoholic, so he gets drunk, and so she kind of has to go into what they call a spook show, which they tell Stan, do not do that. That is bad. And then at the end of the show, they always will tell the audience that yes, it is a fake. They were misled. Now, so also who you meet, William Defoe's character, uh, Clem is how he goes about it. So he's sort of in a moment of weakness. He tells Stan about how they get the geeks, which, if you know what a geek is, it's sort of this depraved human who chases around chickens and then bites off its head. And that was a real thing up until the 40s or something like that, where they kind of wanted to shy away from that because that was really bad news bears. Because how they did it is, you take some homeless bum, he's down on his luck. You give him some alcohol, and you're just like, hey bud, if you want to get a temporary job, you have to stress that it's temporary. Uh, you know, Here, take a shot, and the shot itself is laced with opium, so they get addicted, and it's just like, yeah, this is just temporary until we get a real geek um, to do that, and about the point where they're at the point where it's just like, I'm going to clean up, I'm getting out of here. It's just like, nope. So they do the cold withdrawal, and then they're just mentally just destroyed by this, and they're just abused. And then at that point, they lose their mind, and yeah, they become the geek. They're just like, they chase around the chicken and they bite its head off, and that's the geek. and they do that until they die essentially, or become injured or something like that. And but it's not good. It's really terrible. Um, but yeah, that's how the geek goes. Um, and then they express the one, like, this is the one thing of poor writing. There are two crates full of alcohol, and it's like the blue and a red one, and the one in the blue I think is I don't know which one is which, but I believe it's the one in the blue is the safe alcohol, the moonshine, that he uses to control the carnies, them to drink after all their stress, and Pete's an alcoholic, so he is usually given extra. Um, but and then in the red box, there's the wood alcohol for pickling the medical specimens, because there's like a dead baby and dead fetuses like all in there, and they have like this story behind them and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, the wood alcohol is toxic. Don't do that. And well, it's not stated whether it's an accident. It kind of has looked like a accident, but I mean, later on, you kind of establish that it may not have been an accident, even though he feels bad about it. Um, so yeah, he gives Pete the wrong bottle and he dies, and so him and Molly. That's another point of bad. So the bad writing with the bottles is just like, why would you do this and whatnot. I mean, it's a small nitpick, but I mean, there it is. But another one was the whole thing with Molly. And to be fair, I can kind of get the point where it's just like, where the two of them fall in love. And it's just like, it wasn't really dressed upon. There's some like hints there, but it's not really, it's really weak. So I think that was really poorly portrayed. And to some extent, I can kind of let it get away with it because maybe the whole point was it never was real in the first place. It was just the idea of it. And so I can kind of get, but again, it just wasn't very well portrayed. But anyway, he talks to her about doing a two-person act away from the carnival. And yeah, after Pete dies, she finally takes his offer, and they go off and they get married. And it then shows so Act Two. Oh, and by the way, he's he's che- he's sleeping with Madame Xena. Uh, so there's that. I mean, he's already establishing himself as not the greatest of characters, but he's very ambitious. He has a lot of like hopes and dreams. He's gonna make his mark in the world. But anyway, so part two, you go 2 years later. He is now known as the Great Stanton. It's a psychic act for wealthy people in New York with Molly as his assistant. So he uses Xena and Pete's techniques to sort of do it, with the hand gestures, putting your hands certain ways, certain gestures, and certain language, or what you say. So he is interrupted by Kate Blanchett's character, Lilith Ritter. so who attempts to expose the system, and he then proceeds to literally beat her on the head. Uh, he keeps the safe act, but publicly humiliates her. And yeah, so and it pretty much the whole second act is like them two interacting. Um, and you find out the whole thing is a ruse. So, I mean, she convinces him to, well, not she doesn't convince him, but Judge Kimball, who hired Ritter to do that, um, to test him, but he offers a lot of money to communicate with their dead son. And Molly's just like, no, don't do a spook show. Stan agrees, though. He lets it, and then she invites Stan to her office. You know, and not like nothing is scheduled. He just shows up, I guess. But yeah, like you find out all this stuff. Um, but at the point that she goes to it, like she talks with he talks with the judge, and his wife, and you think it's fine, even though it's a complete spook show and it's a complete fraud. And Ritter, she is a psychiatrist who actually records like all of her clientele's meet like therapy sessions, and so she knows a lot about them. And she's kind of a piece of work herself, um, and she basically just tricks him into going to this another friend of the judge, and Ezra, whose lover died from a forced abortion, is what it sounds like. And he starts the scam. He's just like, I'm no good. We're no good. And then he starts to drink and shows, yeah, he starts to drink, and Ritter shows this scar from where Grindel actually cut her. And apparently, this whole thing was a manipulation to actually get at him, and it worked out great for her. Let me just tell you, like she has all the information to fuel the charades and begins therapy sessions with Stan. Actually, he reveals his guilt over Pete's death and his hatred of his alcoholic father, who he killed in their home. Like it goes and it shows that he literally froze his father to death. I mean, he was old, he was bedridden. I'm pretty sure he was going to die soon, but still, like, yeah, it was. So that was the body that you see at the beginning of the movie. It's fucking crazy. And then in the course of this manipulation with Ezra, um, you know, he starts having this affair with Ritter, and as soon as his Molly finds out about it, she's just like she's gone, and how it's just like you have a hole in you that I was never meant to fill. I don't know what can fill it. And he goes to stop her, and she's just like I'm done with you. I will help you do what you need to do, but after that I'm done. Yeah, it's over. And so he does. He he dresses her up like Dory, with blood, and the intent is to have him pray after he sees her, because he's a terrible guy. He cuts up women. He damages women because of how he feels about Dory, and it's crazy. Unfortunately, Grindel is not someone who will be controlled. He just like he shoves him out of the way, goes and embraces her, and then he finds out it's a fraud, and he just like is saying he will destroy him. And Stan is just like, let her go. He won't, and then he just punches her, or punches him, I should say, Ezra, until he literally smashes his nose in, his face in, and kills him. And while this is happening, his bodyguard is listening to the radio, and you hear about the judge and his wife. Apparently, his wife was like, went so crazy that just like, let's go be with our son. And then he kills the judge and kills herself. And, yeah, it was really messed up. And yeah, he tries to, you know, see the car as like that it was stolen, and that's how he's going to report it. And then Molly, she takes off. She's gone, and he's just like, I don't need you, I don't need you. So he goes to Ritter to get the money. Who for some reason he decides he's going to keep all the money in her safe. And when she gives the money back, it's all it is wads of ones, except for the outer roll. So he effectively got robbed. And yeah, and that's where it literally comes out where she's been manipulating him. Like all of his sessions, they were unscheduled. He just shows up, and because he was so confident that he was the smartest man in the room, he had no guard. So she initially molded him, and she became to him essentially both his mistress and his mother, which yeah, he just completely broke him down, and now he has no money. And then she shoots him in the ear, just like, you knew I had a gun, and now he's wounded. He tries to strangle her, but the cops show up. Like yeah, he already called security to get the cops in there. All of his sessions were taped, so if she ever tries to implicate him, yeah, he's screwed. And then yeah, so he escapes and gets off on a train. But yeah, he literally has nothing because everyone was telling him like, don't do this, don't do the spook show, don't carry it too far. You'll believe in your own nonsense. And yeah, he carried it too far. Now he has nothing. So we finish off. It's again a few years later. He's into alcoholism, and he tries to get a job as a mentalist at another carnival. The owner turns him away. But then I think it's during where I don't know. He does notice that one of the little fetuses in the jar is the same one from the William Dafoe character had. And yeah, but again, he's a complete alcoholic. Says he's, I don't hire drunkards. You smell like you pissed yourself. But then he just gets really nice, and he's just like, here, from one carny to another, and gives him a shot and offers him a temporary job as a new geek until they can get a real geek. And he obviously realizes what this means. This is where he's at. And he's just like, Mister, I was born for it. You know, realizing that he's just a piece of shit. I mean, he killed his father, he killed his mentor while sleeping with his wife. He killed people who he was supposed to be helping and got paid a lot of money for. Like he was, and that's the whole line where it's just like, you know, I was always this piece of shit, and I was always, I'm a piece of shit. I'm gonna be this piece of shit, and yeah, this is where it goes as he begins laughing and crying at the same time. So yeah, it was a solid story. I loved it. It was a bit dragged on at points, a little bit slow, but ultimately, I'd say this is a very good watch. Again, I wouldn't say like it's almost out of theaters anyway, but yeah, it is definitely, especially if you're into psychological thrillers, and if you like ah Guillermo del Toro and his work, you should definitely check this out when it's off on streaming. So anyway, solid movie. I loved it. 8 to 10. Had its faults. It wasn't perfect, but it was a good watch, and I was not disappointed with it. It was very depressing. You know, it's one of those movies where if you want a good depressing movie, because there are moods like that, this is probably a good one for you because it does definitely not have a happy ending. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Nightmare Alley. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next time. See ya.